And we're back. Today, I am getting my low back x-rayed. And no, there isn't anything necessarily wrong with it that I know of right now, but I do want to see what it does look like at this stage in my powerlifting career, because the term that gets tossed around a lot nowadays is the idea that there is an orthopedic cost to what we are doing with our bodies, and that if we are going to push our bodies hard, we are going to see structural degradation because of it. And the big reason I want to get these pictures taken is, number one, to see where my low back is today, to see if there is anything structurally jacked up, and to see if how I've been training and the theories that I'm working with, if they actually are panning out. And if you are not familiar with me, I have been powerlifting for 10 years. I've squatted 1102 in multiply. I've squatted 900 pounds raw. I grew up racing motocross for 14 years, so my lumbar spine has definitely seen some shit. But the whole time that I've been doing it, I've been someone who has been a huge fan of training spinal flexion. I've been a huge fan of training spinal rotation, two movements that we're often told are bad for us. But the idea that I'm operating on is that if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And so many of the old jacked up stiff lifters that have massive low back problems, they're the guys that never bent their spine. They're the guys that never moved their spine. They're the guys that never rotated or moved around their torso. And then they got stiff, they adapted away from those ranges. And that's where we see some really of the nasty structural changes taking place. So let's get some pictures taken. My brother's now working at Atlas Family Chiro and Airdrie. They have an x-ray machine, so that is where we're doing it. And we are going to find out whether or not I am full of shit. This is the x-ray room, as noted by the warnings of danger. Here's Cole getting x-ray stuff all set up.
Mm-hmm. Do you want full spine or just low back?
Probably just lumbar.
Good. Oh, frick, I just put... All right. Great start.
Can you see me?
Yep.
So lumbar spine AP, lumbar spine lateral, exposure, lumbar spine. So face that way. Cross your arms up in front of you like a genie. Go right up against the bucky. I'm going to feel the top of your hip. Open that up all the way because you're fairly tall. Take a smidgen step forward. No chance you're pregnant?
Slim to none.
All right, stay right there. Okay, relax. Turn and face the tube.
How's it look?
Honestly, fine. Well, you definitely have bowel gas, but...
Well, that's reasonable.
Disc spaces all look pretty even and healthy. No spondylolisthesis, no fracture. Point to your belly button with one finger. Scoot that way a tiny bit. All right, stay right there. We're done.
Sick.
Just gotta mark them.
So that's that. We will run to the other room and take a look at my insides. So I'm going to frame this weird so I can put the images up on the screen for you guys that are trying to look at the monitor. But what are we looking at?
All right, so this is your lumbar spine from like the anterior to posterior. L1, 2, 3, 4, 5. S1, sacrum looks normal. SI joint, there's no calcification, looks nice and healthy. Both your femoral acetabular joints look clear, no signs of arthritis. Basically, I don't know, bowel gas is normal. Actually, you're not that full of shit, honestly.
Ha
From the side here, L5S1 might look a little bit janky, but like emphasis on a little bit. All these disc spaces are fairly even. Maybe a tiny bit of calcification right here. But with everything you've done, I feel like this is quite the normal spine. I mean, I've seen people who do a lot less stuff have a lot more messed up spines at age 29, so...
All right, we are back at the office. And going into that today, I really had no idea what to expect, because I know that things are working good. I know that things are feeling good, but I also know that how things work and how things feel doesn't necessarily equate to the state of the structure. And I've also heard for years and years and years and years that a lot of what I do for my low back probably isn't good for it structurally. And if we're coming at it from the movement pessimism side of things, if we're coming at it from saying that the idea of using your spine and moving your spine is going to be bad for your spine, there is going to be some truth to that, because if you use your spine and if you move your spine beyond what it is currently capable of handling, yes, of course, there is going to be some risk. But the point that I wanted to make with this video is that if we are using our spine and moving our spine and loading our spine appropriate to what it can handle, and then we're trying to progress at a rate appropriate to how we can adapt, we're not going to see massive structural detriment. We're actually going to see positive structural changes, which is becoming more and more apparent in the research, that the spine, the discs, the musculature, it can all adapt positively to work if we challenge it at a rate that it can adapt to. And that's going to be the key thing here is over and over again is we need to challenge it at a rate that it can adapt to. And I'm super, super stoked to see that my spine looks and well, it looks as good as it works and feels. And I do know that obviously on an x-ray we cannot see soft tissue, but we can at least extrapolate disc health from looking at disc spacing, and we can extrapolate everything going on by looking at calcification patterns and seeing that both of those are very, very, very clean, especially considering what I have done with my body over the years, with years of motocross, with the years and years of powerlifting. Like, my spine looks pretty freaking healthy, especially when you consider everything that I've done. And I think that I can credit a lot of that to how fortunate I was to have been brought up around conjugate. And there's a Louis quote, I think this is Powers in the USA in like 1993, where I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't remember the exact quote, but he's talking about how the best thing a lifter can do to ensure that they're able to do well after lifting is train their back by bending and extending their back, because if you lose that ability, it's going to be so, so, so hard to get back. And when we were looking at like the lifters that are, crusty and jacked up to the low back, they're the guys that didn't train any spinal flexion extension. They're the guys that just tried to be braced the whole time. They're the guys that tried to never move their torso. And by never moving their torso, they lost the ability to move their torso. And then the structural adaptations that are going to prevent torso motion and leave them really jacked up, they're going to follow suit from not using it. And I'll go back to again saying that I was so fortunate to be brought up in conjugate, because I was taught to do reverse hypers multiple times a week, every single week, and I did that for years and years and years and years. And I don't think it's the reverse hyper that's magical. I think it's what the reverse hyper is doing for us, because if we break down a reverse hyper, we're training spinal flexion, we're training spinal extension, we're training ourselves to produce force in it, we're training ourselves to control that motion. And by training ourselves to produce force and control that motion, we're going to get better at handling that motion. And obviously, reverse hyper isn't the only way to train a low back. I've done a lot more with Jefferson curls. I've done a lot more with spinal rotation work as of late. But the more I explore, the more ability that I build, the more and more my low back can handle, and the better and better that my low back feels. So the bottom line, the big point that I wanted to make with this video is that we don't need to be afraid of training our low backs. We don't need to be afraid of going out of neutral. What we need to do is make sure that when we do train our low backs and when we do go out of neutral, we need to make sure that we're doing it in a manner that we can control and doing it in a manner that we can progress over time. Because if we're controlling it and we're progressing it over time, we're going to mitigate risk. And by progressing it, we're going to reduce future risks, because we're getting all of the stuff necessary to control and stabilize and support the spine to get stronger. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for taking a look at my x-rays with me. I appreciate the heck out of you guys. So I'm going to say all that YouTube stuff. Please click like, please click subscribe, please share this with your friends, because it helps the channel get around so that we can spread more movement positivity to the lifting community.